There is a quiet room where anger once lived. The air still hums with what was never said. A chair is overturned, not from rage, but from the weight of someone who could no longer stand being small. And in the corner, a child hides behind the door, not out of fear of being punished, but out of terror of being forgotten. That child grows up. Their body becomes taller, their voice deeper, their eyes sharper. But inside, the same trembling heartbeat remains, now dressed in armor. And one day, the world will call them the abuser. But before that word, there was a wound. Abuse rarely begins with cruelty. It begins with powerlessness. Behind every hand that controls, every voice that dominates, every glare that freezes another into silence, there was once a moment when that same person felt utterly helpless. In childhood, the abuser was often overpowered by chaos, neglect, humiliation, or a love that arrived only through fear. They learned that to be safe, one must become stronger than the threat. To survive, one must control. But control, when born from terror, is never strength. It's just fear wearing a mask. Imagine a boy who learned that tenderness invites pain. Every time he cried, someone laughed. Every time he reached out, someone turned away. So he learned to stop reaching. He built walls made of scorn and superiority. Or a girl, whose father's silence felt like a locked door. She learned that being loud, cruel, or manipulative could at least make the door open, even if it opened in anger. To her, rage became a language of contact, because sometimes to be hated feels closer than being unseen. That's the strange alchemy of abuse. Pain transmuted into dominance, helplessness reforged into power. But it's counterfeit power, brittle, temporary, always on the verge of collapse. Inside the abuser, there is an eternal argument between the child who begged to be loved and the adult who refuses to ever beg again. They confuse intimidation for respect, compliance for care, silence for peace. And yet, every insult, every strike, every manipulation is not just directed outward. It's also turned inward, like a mirror that cuts both ways. Because the abuser hates most what they once were, weak, frightened, yearning. So they destroy in others what they cannot forgive in themselves. There's a house within them. The doors are locked, the windows are covered. Only one room is lit, the room of control. Every other space, grief, tenderness, guilt, is dark, boarded up, silenced. And when love tries to enter, it feels like an intruder. So they attack it. To love them is to walk through a maze built from their own defenses. Every corridor lined with barbed memories of betrayal. The closer you come to their real self, the more dangerous it becomes. This is the paradox. They crave closeness, but fear being known. They punish vulnerability, but secretly long for it. They destroy connection to feel safe, then drown in loneliness they can't explain. And the tragedy is that many never realize what they're doing. Their cruelty feels justified, even righteous. Because in their mind, they're not hurting, they're protecting. They're not dominating, they're preventing their own destruction. Maybe you see yourself here, not in the violence, but in the hunger underneath it. Maybe you felt that burning need to control what hurts you, to make someone else feel what you once endured. Or maybe you've been the one standing opposite, shrinking under someone's fury, whispering to yourself that if you just stay quiet, it'll pass. But silence never ends violence. It only teaches it how to hide. And if you've ever caught yourself becoming what you once feared, know this: you're not evil. You're repeating the only script you were ever given. You're reenacting a survival story written in the language of dominance, because that's the only way your nervous system ever learned to feel safe. The abuser is not born. They are constructed, layer by layer, in homes where love and fear share the same breath. Abuse is not an act. It's an ecosystem. It lives in the nervous system long before it reaches the hands. It's the flinch before the shout, the tightening jaw, the swallowed apology. It's the inheritance of generations, passed down through tone, silence, neglect, punishment, a legacy of pain masquerading as strength. And yet, even within the abuser, there's still a heartbeat that remembers something softer. A small, trembling voice that once whispered, "Please don't leave me." That voice is not gone. It's buried beneath layers of rage, entitlement, and denial. But if you listen closely enough, you can still hear it. Faint, desperate, terrified of being found. The mask of the abuser is not always loud. Sometimes it's charming. Sometimes it's kind. The cruelty hides in subtlety, in manipulation, in withdrawal, in guilt disguised as love. They might apologize beautifully, even cry. But it's not always remorse. Sometimes it's panic. Panic that their control is slipping, that the mirror is turning toward them. True remorse requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels like the very danger they've spent a lifetime escaping. So they return to their fortress. Control, deflection, blame, silence, anything but softness. Because to be soft again would mean returning to that helpless child, the one who had no say, no safety, no protection, and they would rather burn every bridge than feel that again. This isn't to excuse them. It's to understand the machinery, because only what is understood can be dismantled. Compassion for the abuser does not mean tolerance. It means recognizing that their cruelty is the echo of their own suffering. And that healing, if it ever happens, begins with facing the horror of what they've become and the unbearable grief of why. Most will never get there, because to heal, they must first admit they were once victims, and the truth shatters the entire identity they built to survive. But some do. Some reach a breaking point where control no longer protects. It poisons. They begin to see that their power isolates them, that fear is not respect, and that love cannot exist where safety does not. And in that moment, a small crack appears in the armor. Through it, light seeps in. It's blinding at first, then warm, then human. For those who've harmed, and for those who've been harmed, the path is the same, to face the pain beneath the pattern. Healing is not about punishment or forgiveness. It's about contact with the truth. The abuser must meet the child inside, not as an enemy, but as a memory. They must walk back into that house of locked rooms and open each one. Grief will live there. Shame will live there. But so will life. Because abuse ends not when we punish the darkness, but when we illuminate what made it grow. And for the survivor, the one who loved them, feared them, or both, healing means reclaiming the right to feel safe without permission. It means realizing that what was done to you is not who you are, that someone's inability to love you gently is not proof that you were unlovable. Every abuser was once powerless. Every survivor is learning to be powerful without becoming cruel. This is where the cycle can end, when power no longer means domination, but integrity. In the end, abuse is not a story about monsters. It's a story about human beings who lost their way back to tenderness. And if you look closely enough, even through the smoke, through the wreckage, through the silence, you can still find the child who only ever wanted to be safe. No one is born to break others. We only break when no one shows us how to be whole.